Hey, good morning. It's Andy. It's Tuesday morning. I hope you've had a good start to your week as we gather together each morning for some time in the Word together. Yesterday we read Joshua, that great covenant scene where the people have chosen to follow God. They've chosen to put away the gods of their neighbors, but to focus and choose to worship and follow God. And so that's kind of how the book of Joshua ended. Or the next book of the Bible after Joshua is Judges. And so we're going to just kind of jump right into it and see what happens in Judges. We're going to be reading Judges chapter 2. We're going to be reading verses 11 through 23. So remember, they just had this great covenant scene with Joshua where they have chosen to follow God, to make him their God in all things. And so we're not going to, verses 6 through 10 tell about Joshua's death. Verse 7 says, they worshiped the Lord all the days of Joshua, and all the elders who outlived Joshua who had seen the great works of the Lord. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. So they buried him, and so on and so forth. This is verse 11. Then the Israelites did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and worshipped the Baals. And they abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who brought them out of the land of Egypt. They followed other gods from among the gods of the peoples who were all around them. They bowed down to them and provoked the Lord to anger. They abandoned the Lord and worshipped Baal and the Astartes. The anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to plunderers who plundered them and sold them to the powers of their enemies all around them. They would no longer withstand their enemies. Whenever they marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them to bring them misfortune. The Lord warned them and sworn them. They were in great distress. Then the Lord raised up judges who delivered them out of the power of those who plundered them. Yet they did not listen even to the judges, for they lusted after the gods and bowed down to them. They soon turned aside from the way of their ancestors had walked, who had obeyed the commandment of the Lord. They did not follow their example. Whenever the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with the judge. He delivered them from the hand of the enemies all the days of the judge. For the Lord would be moved to pity while they're groaning because of those who persecuted and oppressed them. And whenever the judge died, they would relapse and behave worse than their ancestors, following other gods, worshiping them and bowing down before them. They would not drop any of their practices of their stubborn ways. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. Because my people have transgressed my covenant that I commanded to their ancestors, and have not obeyed my voice, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations that Joshua left when he died. In order to test Israel, whether or not they would care to walk in the way of the Lord as their ancestors did, the Lord left those nations, not driving them out at once, and had not handed them over to Joshua. So we see in Judges a pattern emerge. We see Joshua, it ends well. The people saying, no, we're going to choose to, we talked about this yesterday. People saying, no, we're going to choose to worship God. We're going to choose to follow God. We're going to choose to put aside the gods of our neighbors. We're going to worship God and God alone. Then Joshua dies. After Joshua dies, it says the people turned from God and began to worship the false gods. And they would turn from God, they would be captured, they would be plundered, they would fall into sin, they would fall into they would become prisoners, they would fall into captivity, they would cry out to God, then God would raise up a judge. This judge would come, this judge would lead the people, this judge would free the people, they would have a time of peace during the life of this judge, then the judge would die. And they would fall back into sin, fall back into idolatry, fall back into their ways, and the cycle would repeat over and over and over. And that's what happens throughout the book of Judges. That one passage summarized the entire book of Judges. Freedom, sin, captivity, crying out for help, raising up a judge, freedom, sin. And so it continues over and over and over and over again. When the judge was living, God was with the judge, and the Israelites followed God. And when the judge died, they would fall back into their sin. That is a pattern that they repeated over and over. And I want to talk real quick today about idolatry and why that is such a constant trap for the Israelites, why they would worship these idols, because that doesn't make any sense to us, does it? Just doesn't make any sense. Why would they worship idols? I mean, they've seen the sovereign God of heaven do these amazing acts. They've seen God free them, God deliver them. Why would they choose to worship idols? Well, it says here the Baals, the Baal. The Baals were a classification of Canaanite gods. And the main area that the Baals, it's pronounced either way, is the harvest and fertility. And if you've never been to the Holy Land, the Bible says it's a land flowing with milk and honey, which there are some very lush and very wonderful areas in Israel, no doubt. But a lot of it is arid, a lot of it's desert, and even a lot of the good growing land is full of rocks, like in Galilee. So it's a hard living to be a farmer in the Holy Land. It's a challenge. It's hard. It's not something that's easy to do. And so the people said, yes, God, we trust you. Yes, we trust you. Yes, you are God. You are God. They never stopped worshiping Yahweh in the midst of their falling into idolatry. They never stopped worshiping Yahweh. They continued to worship God. What they did was this. They said, yes, we trust you. And yes, we know that Baal is not a real God. We know Baal's not a real God. You alone are God. You're the only real God. We know that Baal's God. But just to be safe, just to cover all of our bases, we're going to worship Baal too. No, hear me. We know Baal's not God. We're not saying Baal's God. No. We know you're the only God. Of course you're the only God. So we're not worshiping Baal because Baal's God. No, you're God. But just to be safe, just to cover all of our bases, we're going to worship Baal too. The people didn't trust in God alone for their protection, their safety. They worshiped the Baals just to be safe. I put forth for me and for us, I doubt we have idols on top of our TVs at our house, do we? But what is it that we trust in the same way they trust in the Baals? We know that God is God, and we trust him. But just to be safe, we're going to do this. God, I know you're God, but just to be safe, I'm going to let my savings account or my bank account determine what I do. God, I know you're God, but just to be safe, I'm going to put my real effort here. I know you're God. I trust in you, I do, but just to be safe, I'm going to do this. Whatever that thing is that we do, just to be safe, that's our idol. That's our idol. For the Israelites, that idol was Baal, the Canaanite god of fertility and the harvest. In an arid desert land, you can't have too many things going for you, can you? So they worship Baal just to be safe. They trusted in God, but just to cover all of our bases. What is it for me and you today that we do just to be safe? Whatever that is, that's our idol. And that's where we need to be careful. We need to tread lightly. Because that thing will pull us from God if we're not careful. That's what happened to the Israelites. And they began to love Baal more than Yahweh. Even though they never knew that, even though they knew the entire time that Baal was not a real God, they still inclined their hearts to him. So today, let's be careful out there, y'all. I don't know if any of y'all are my age, remember Hill Street Blues? Let's be careful out there today, Be careful out there. Be careful of what your heart longs for. Be careful for what you're tempted to put your hope in instead of God. Because he will take care of us. May we always remember that. Hey, I hope you guys have a great Tuesday. Have an awesome day today. Put your faith in God above all else. See you tomorrow morning. Have a great day.